The second keynote speaker, the president of Yumiba Trading, Mr. Akinobu Yumiba, will talk on the Kagoshima to global exporting agriculture, forestry, and fishery product. The Yumiba Trading is based on Kagoshima city, expanding its business globally. It is a general trading company that they export the agricultural, forestry, and fishery product and import feed materials and fertilizers of southern Kyushu. Mr. Yumiba, please.
My name is Yumiba from Yumiba Trading. I'm afraid I cannot hear him well. SNBL has Proton Center in Ibusuki. So I had an honor to visit there in the past. And there are lots of devices to irradiate tumor with proton beam. I also stayed there and enjoyed a lot. That was a very wonderful opportunity for me. And listening to his presentation, the ideal state and the current state of SNBL, I learned a lot from his presentation. So in that sense, I spent a very good time. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Now, let me start my presentation. I like to focus on local aspect, starting from Kagoshima to global, as my title mentioned. About 41 years ago, I started my business without any specific knowledge about trading and experience. But for some reason, I happened to start my trading business. And I like to talk about what kind of business I have been doing so far. So how can I change my slide? Thank you. Okay. Let me introduce myself, and followed by I'd like to talk about Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteers. 15 years ago, I participated in JOCV and went to Malaysia. And I like to also talk about the activities in Malaysia and the background why I started a trading company. Then number 5, I like to talk about the explanation, in particular, export of agriculture products. And the government had a target of 2 trillion yen by 2025 and 5 trillion yen by 2050. This is the government target. And what the idea of the government will be introduced or explained by myself. And what kind of initiative or efforts Yumiba Trading is doing. And number 6, I have involved in volunteer activities, so I like to talk about how to nurture the youth. In particular, how to dispatch younger generation to other countries, and so on. And also, I visit a school to deliver a speech to students and so on. And lastly, I'd like to mention messages to students. But I think that Mr. Takanashi also covered this topic, so my talk might overlap what he said. But so I hope you will enjoy my talk. Let me start from my self-introduction. I was born in Iju in town, Hiyoki City. And actually, I am the eighth of 6 boys and 3 girls. My family has many children because at that time, the population was not decreasing. And the parents were farmers, and they produces leaf tobacco, sweet potatoes, vegetables, and so on. So in my childhood, I supported and helped my parents. So that was a normal situation of my childhood. Kids supported and helped parents. And I also was a paper boy during my junior and senior high school days. And after graduating from high school, I found a job at a lab of welding rod manufacturer. And there I studied a basic of welding rod business. But at that time, I didn't know whether that was a way to go for me. So I started to explore my future by reading historical novel one after another for my future. Kagoshima is surrounded by the sea, and over the sea or across the sea, what countries are there? I was wondering. Then so I was wondering what I should do. And after visiting foreign countries, I stayed there for a while, and also wondering I should go back to Kagoshima or not. And I decided not and continue my travel without any specific plan. I visited a country and tried to find where to stay there through the communication with local people. Of course, at the time, I didn't speak any foreign languages, so I had very big trouble. But I enjoyed my encounter with local people a lot. Then I happened to see, after going back to Kagoshima, I happened to see a poster of Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteers, or JOCV, and I noticed I was able to go to foreign countries financed by the Japanese government. As you may know, JOCV is financed by ODA budget of the Japanese government. And one of the projects conducted by JICA and what kind of initiatives we can do through JOCV. These are the topic of this JOCV project. And there are three purposes of this project. One is contribution to development and restoration of economy and society of developing countries. Number two, the deepening and coexistence among multicultural society. Number three is social contribution through volunteer activities. And Malaysia, let me talk about activities, what I did in Malaysia. In 1965, Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia, and Indonesia, I visited. And one of my destinations was Malaysia. I was very surprised to know that there are many people with different ethnicity, and the people were living together despite such differences. And while living there, of course, Malay people accounted for the most in Malaysia. And not only Malay people, but also I communicated with Chinese people as well. Malaysia is such a multi-ethnic country, and people lived together based on a certain social rules. This is what I noticed there. And during my stay, I worked for vocational training school. That means I had school holidays. During the holiday, I visited Indonesia, Thailand, Laos, and so on. In particular, in Indonesia, there are lots of children on the street doing their own business and so on. Actually, local children didn't have time to think about their future or dream their future. And I noticed the differences between such a country and Japan there. I was dispatched to Kotabao on Malay Peninsula. Kotabalo is located at the north of Malay Peninsula, opposite side of Penang. I was dispatched to that area. As the elderly may know, Kotabalu was a place where the Japanese military landed and went to Singapore from Kotabao. And of course, there is a language barrier. Even after 3 months language training in Japan, it was very difficult for me to communicate with local people based with local language. But by communicating with many people, I tried to develop my language school. And I happen to know that from 1942 to 1944, Japanese military was there, and I knew what they did. They did good thing and bad thing. Also, I was born after the end of World War, so I didn't know what happened during the Second World War, but I felt very sorry for what the Japanese military did at the time. And since the end of the World War, actually local people had no chance to talk with Japanese people. That's why they let me know what happened during the war. And the local people said sorry for touching on such a thing. They had not had opportunity to talk with Japanese people since the end of World War, and I noticed the importance of communication as well. And these are my students at a vocational school. It's very difficult to find out where I am. Actually, I am just in the middle of this picture. And after 2 years stay in Malaysia, of course, I had to go back to Japan, but I decided to travel other countries, including the former Soviet Union. In order to go to Rome, I had to stay 2 nights in Moscow, actually. When I stayed in a hotel, so people stayed there, talked ill about the Soviet Union. I was alone, so maybe that person talked a lot to me. At that time, so I didn't hear that talk. Based on my intuition, I shouldn't have talked with that person. Anyway, so I went to Europe, but I like to go to the United States in the end, but it was very difficult to obtain visa to go to the United States back then. And partly due to the incident, gun-related this incident at the time. it was very difficult to obtain visa from the United States. During my stay in Malaysia and the Soviet Union, I noticed the importance of acquiring foreign language. That's why after arriving in the UK, I went to English language school. And after a 4-month stay, again, I did want to continue my travel without going back to Kagoshima, but I decided to go back to Japan because one of my older brother did his own job in Osaka. I decided to join the company. I was wondering what I should do to realize my dream. I decided to save money, and after having 10 million yen, I went back to Kagoshima. I'm afraid there seems to be some problem. I decided to do a trading business, partly because my friend, one of my friends left Kagoshima. In particular, 70% of men left Kagoshima, and 30% of women left Kagoshima. I heard this kind of story from my friend, and I thought if there was enough job, not so many people had to leave the homeland. So if I created a job, people would be able to stay there. And at that time, one of the Japanese paper have a serial article about small company with large capital. So at that time, there were 18 such companies in Kagoshima. And I was wondering what I should do. And I noticed there is a Sakurajima mountain, and there should be light stones. And there might be something that could be exported to other countries. Based on such idea, I started my trading business. Recently, the government has talked a lot about the export of agriculture. I'm afraid I cannot change my slide. And let me talk about what a trading business is, in particular the export of agriculture products of Japan. As you may be familiar with this graph, this is about the trend of export of agricultural products and food in Japan. Under the pandemic, fishery product of Hokkaido, which accounted for a vast amount of the export, was very stagnant under the pandemic. So in 2020, the export volume was not able to achieve the target, but in 2021, the volume reached 1.2 trillion yen. And in 2022, up until September, there was an increase of 14.9% when it comes to the export. And this slide shows the government policy to promote export. I'm afraid due to time constraint, I'm not going into detail, but this is a basic policy. Specifically, so this slide is about a strategy to expand export. There is a priority items listed. There are 28 priority items for export. And such items contain Kagoshima-based product. There are lots of specific plans to enhance and what kind of business should be supported. This kind of information is available on internet, so let me skip detailed explanation.
And then, 28 items are shown here. As you see, Kagoshima is strong with the export of beef in Olympics. In 6 out of 28, we won at beef, pork, chicken, eggs, and vegetables, sweet potatoes, tea, buri, irochel, and Thai red bean, and some sweet specific to the Kagoshima using sweet potatoes are strong together with miso, shoyu. So out of 28 Kagoshima-based produce are designated as widely known items. And this is the export result year-on-year base. So we see how the sales grow in export, and many of them are from Kagoshima. So the logs, as for the export of logs, Shibushi Port is #1 in Japan. And as for red bean, as I said, so it's strong in export. So the base, on average, 25% growth can be shown, but some of them grew more. For example, buri, yellow tail, 42.6% growth is shown, and red green tea, 26.1%, which is similar to the average. And pot-planted tree, which is a strong item of Kagoshima, the last year, the sales growth was minus, but cycle it on the trees specific to Kagoshima will grow. And we can see rapid growth in for the export of eggs. 27.9% growth is shown for the export growth of eggs. Here, you can see the actual status of the export of Japan, and let's look at each region. You can see from number 1 to 10th. Number 1 is China right now. In the past, number 1 was Hong Kong, but right now, number 1 is China. And please look at the yellow part. Those items are produced in Kagoshima as well. And red ones, the Kagoshima's expertise. And from Kagoshima, those items are exported. And Kagoshima is a livelihood prefecture, and we export the skin part of pork. So as a raw material, the raw pork skin is salted and exported. So we add additional values to our items, which is promoted by our governor. So there is a possibility to increase the sales of pork skin and together with red spring. And it is processed and a Gucci, very famous brand, use the skin that we produce. So in the future, we can produce more products in this field. So the skin of the pork or pigs, actually, sorry, it's not the pork, but the pigs is our strong product. Maybe my talk is prolonged. I am an analog person. Sorry. Please wait for a while. Now we have a technical problem. So from southern Kyushu, what kind of items are exported based on Shiboshi port? In Kagoshima, as export port, we have Shiboshi, Kagoshima, Sendai port for export. So the southern Kyushu items can be exported from those ports. So here shows the primary industry of Kagoshima, fishery, agriculture, and forestry of Kagoshima. I will touch on that part. So as for the output, we are second, following Hokkaido. So we have a high potential to produce more product. So number 1 pork, beef, and poultry, sweet potato, broiler, green tea. There are many items for which we are number one as far as the export or the sales or the production is concerned. Here is the items of the forestry. Many of them are bamboo-related products, and this shows the fishery product. So we are strong with culturing yellow tails or greater yellow tail and a prawn and eel. So we are number one for those products. And the government set a target of the volume of the export, and Kagoshima also set the target. And how much items are exported from Kagoshima? And number one destination for our export is the US. So I didn't touch on this part so much, but for US, we cover a large variety of items for export. And as for the export to China, scallop number one, and for Hong Kong, pearl is number one. And as for the US, the Kagoshima produced items are exported, and 14.5 billion yen is the export amount to the US. Here shows the Kagoshima Prefecture's export target. So I was a member of creating this vision, and 30 billion yen was a target, but we reached the agreement to achieve this target. Actually, we already achieved this target. Here you can see the target of 31 billion point 1,000 yen. Maybe the next target will be 50 billion due to rapid growth of the primary industry product of Kagoshima. And here shows our Yumiba trading companies' business activities. Our activities are export and import, and target exporting company. In number one is US, Canada, Taiwan, Indonesia, India, Singapore, Malaysia. And as for the export items, Kagoshima-based items such as yellowtail, beef, the processed sea product, are the main products. It's difficult to send the fresh material by air, but if we send them in a frozen status, the material or the product can be still fresh, and they are well received. And as for the sweet potatoes, the China-based peoples love sweet potato-related products. And from Kagoshima, we export sweet potatoes. But in some countries, the fresh vegetables or the fruits not allowed to be imported. In Canada, it's okay. So as for the primary industry product, there are various kinds of regulations in each country. So we have to look at the details of the regulations. And in US, the fresh vegetables or fruits are not allowed. So if we processed those products like baked potatoes, we can export them to the US. So in Kagoshima, food industry is very flourished, including noodles and condiment. In regard to export businesses, so you can see bicycles as one of the import items. We import a finished product, but also a semi-finished product and materials. So we produce a variety of products. So for those products, we import the materials as well. So in the past, in the southern Kyushu, the specific kind of trees, the camphor trees, were produced, and the barks of the trees were powdered and used for incense. And we also produce we imported chemical fertilizers in the past. But China set higher tariff uh, for for those items, and we have now difficulty to export those products to China. And these are our focuses. And US, Europe are our target areas for export. We're using various routes. We export our product. So we try to increase added value to our product. For example, egg rolls, because we export a lot of eggs to Hong Kong, Taiwan. So we process eggs to make egg rolls to be exported to the US or other countries. And another item is green tea, organically grown tea, green tea. Actually, 70% of the export of teas to Canada is organically grown tea, and to Europe. Also, we try to produce the product grown without using chemicals. So actually, we use the Nijiyama market, which is a Japan-based supermarket. We use that company for export. So from Mexico, so we want to import silver product. Sorry, so the Nijiyama market started with the silver trading. And in San Diego, they set the first store at San Diego, Hawaii, in New York. Nijiyama market expanded the number of their stores. And the other day, President visited Kagoshima to visit the family graveyard. And at that time, he visited the plant in Kagoshima, and Nijiyama market wanted to import the product from Kagoshima, and I was a consultant at that time. And monthly 40-feet containers, 40-feet containers are used for the export right now to Nijiyama market. And the export items to the US, the Kagoshima and Hokkaido are very important. We can cover most of the export. And 60 companies' products are exported from this area. And the pap and mother based company products are exported to US as well. So there are several issues in a pandemic situation. One of them is freight cost. So now freight cost is very high. It is now tripled that of in the past. Recently, it became a little bit mitigated. So, but Japan container companies has been in debt, and the three companies are merged to make a company named One. And now, but still, the freight cost does not decrease. So, so the company One in Japan, their freight is highest in the world, and the companies in the United States do not want to use the company. So as for the Japan, economic power became weaker right now. So many ships do not stop at the port in Japan. Or North American route. So the Japan's share is only 2%. So before it was 30% or something, but unfortunately, sadly, our competitiveness decreased and our share is only 2%. And also, the foreign currency exchange rate is another important factor for our businesses. So after the weather forecast, the foreign currency exchange rate is broadcasted in on TV. It is fluctuating very fervently in some cases during COVID-19 pandemic. So face-to-face meeting is difficult, and we use online system. So we need the IT skills and knowledge to do online business meetings. So our effort for expansion of export of the primary industry product for post-pandemic. Firstly, we have to create added value, including processed food, and we have to increase competitiveness by optimization of the sales channel. So we don't have to depend on company One. We can use foreign companies' freight. So the value of the company or the strength of the company is being tested. So what kind of supply chain is to be used is a key. And also, in Kagoshima, there are good qualities of product from the material to the processed food, as we can take good care. But to which countries we have to export, that we have to consider this kind of issues. Another important point is the establishment of Kagoshima brand. I don't have enough time right now, but 2 weeks ago. So actually, Shibushi, I was a lecturer in the Shibushi port related to symposium or the meeting, and I proposed to use Shibushi port as a global port. For example, in the port in Singapore, I visited the port 20 years ago. There was nothing. but the construction started to make a port, and 100 10 million EPU PEU is now handled in that port right now. So how about Japan? Tokyo, Yokohama, 7 million, and Osaka port, 5 million only. So the port in Malaysia, they handle their own country's product. So the port functions as an international hub port. Shibushi port faces the Pacific Ocean, so we can make Shibushi port to be international hub port. This is the port of Tanjou or Malaysia Johor, Port Tanjou. And this one of the branch activities of the JICA, Youth International Corporation. So the return to the local communities is one of the missions. And PR is our key. As a part of PR activities, the Beijing High School and high school student in Kagoshima, 15 students are dispatched as Youth International Corporation volunteers. And the mass communication staff will be with them. And a student experienced homestay for 4 nights. So through various experience of the students, what they learn will be returned to the local community, and this is a good opportunity for them to reflect themselves. Now, to 7 countries, our students are dispatched. In the past, 362 students are dispatched. And again, they may visit other countries as Youth International Corporation volunteers again. During those experiences, they can find something new. For example, during the homestay in the Sulawesi Island in Indonesia, I experienced a homestay there, and I took care of the student in the same village as well. And I called the name of student, the name of one student, and the student started crying because the student felt lonely because he didn't understand any language. She didn't understand any language, but he could hear Japanese language, and she started crying. And since the mass communication staff was with them, and she was asked why you cried, and she felt that humiliated, and she studied the languages of other countries. So what kind of activities are being done in the JICA or in the Youth International Corporation groups should be reported more. He is a high school student in Cambodia. Since there is a freshwater pipeline, they use rains. And since there is no washing machine, they used this tool. So during a 4-night stay, the Japanese student experienced this kind of things. Here shows Kagoshima Prefecture Youth International Cooperation Experience Program. Next year marked the 30th anniversary. I want to realize these activities in the next year. And lastly, here is a message to students. Now, Japan is being internationalized. So the internal internationalization is important. It means that understanding other people's values and getting rid of discrimination, we have to understand the foreign countries' culture, language, and religions. So that's something the student can experience in the volunteer activities. So there are 40 chances a year to join those activities. And as Takaneshi sensei said, we have to be proud of being Japanese, even the world of internationalization. And think global, act locally is an important mindset. We want students or people to make it into practice. So be active. This is a message to the student. And Darwin's evolution theory, it's not true that stronger and bigger creatures can survive. It's not true. The evolutionary, environmentally adaptable ones can survive. So without being afraid of changes, we have to be always proactive. So in this grove, how Kagoshima make effort should be something that we have to consider as well. And we have to consider aging society with less children as well. And lastly, this is the coffee beans produced in Kagoshima in my backyard. Actually, this coffee plant is grown. So, but 1 cup of coffee may be very expensive. But in COP27, the important issues are discussed. In Kagoshima, tropical plants or crops can be grown, which is another important point that you have to keep in mind. Thank you very much for your attention.